but a special brand of coffee called Kopi Luwak. That sounds fancy. That sounds a little bit more of a tongue twister than Brazilian. Kopi Luwak. It's a very expensive coffee. I'd probably have to sell my car to get a cup of coffee made from this bean. This is a special bean that is grown particularly, it comes from a couple of areas. You don't sell this, do you? No. You know of it though, okay. It particularly comes from Indonesia. It comes from a couple of other parts of the world too, but particularly from Indonesia. And it grows mostly in the wild. It doesn't mostly grow on farms. And those who gather it have a special way of gathering it. They follow these little things called civet cats. They're little tiny, they're kind of like a mini version of a bobcat or something. They live in Asia. But you look for these cats because these cats love to eat this type of coffee bean. And so to find this coffee bean in the wild, you find this civet cat and you follow it around for a while, and the civet cat will start to eat the beans. And, well, in the digestive system of the civet cat, it takes off the rough outer layer. And rather than roasting this bean, you let it go through the civet cat's digestive system. And you follow the cat around, and eventually what goes in comes out. And you find where the civet cat has been, and you'll find a little chain of these coffee beans. Now perfectly prepared by the digestive system of the civet cat. Are you delighted to go try it? As I say, this is a high-end, expensive coffee bean. You don't even have to roast it now. You have to grind it still. But you've got something of great value. In many ways, this is kind of the Christmas story as well, you know. That what has been thrown out, what looks like is waste, is turned into something very beautiful. And that's the whole story of Christmas. Child, born in a poverty-stricken corner of the Roman Empire into a little town of Bethlehem, a town that had formerly been a great town, but now is a little hamlet full of memories of what used to have been. The child who's forced to run as a refugee to a whole other country. And then grows up in Nazareth, a town in which one of his own followers would later say, "What good could come from Nazareth?" He grows up living basically as a homeless wanderer, rejected by his own family through gossip and intrigue, rejected as a teacher, and eventually executed as a criminal, yet lived in the power of his Father, so that which was refuse is turned into the most beautiful exclamation point of all of creation. Jesus showed what it meant to live in communion with his Father. Do you know what? We can live in that same communion, in that same power. Why did Jesus come? This last week, if you picked up the weekly review, they had an editorial in there, and it was talking about some of the facts of Christmas and how some of the facts will look are different. That it might have been a cave and not a proper stable, and all these things. And I don't know if it was ready. I think it was surprised because most of it absolutely true. And it came up with a lot of things of how Jesus' birth came about. And what went on around it, and who was involved in it. And it answered some of those questions. But I'm going to tell you that the most important question of the Christmas story is not those ones. The important question of the Christmas story is, why did it happen? Why? Why on earth would God come as a child to Bethlehem? Why on earth is it important? The month of December, taking 4 opportunities to answer that question of why. And I'm using the logo of our denomination, which it's going to be on the screen in a minute, but it's on your bulletins, it's on signs out front, it's in the foyer out there. Because that logo actually means something. And it's 4 ways to look at Jesus and the way that Jesus makes a difference in our life. And I'm mixing the order up because on Christmas Eve, I want to talk about Jesus as Savior. And that's one of the ways we look at Him. A couple of weeks ago, Jeff already brought this up, we talked about Jesus coming as our healer. Next Sunday, if you're here, I'm going to talk about Jesus as our coming King. Healer. Oh, that's quite the thing. That one day, we will be perfectly recreated in our bodies to how we should have been if sin had never entered into our world. And when Jesus comes and He does a miraculous healing in our body, that physically we are made well when we were not, and it's a miracle of God, that is a symbol to us of what is to come one day. We have hope and promise. And Jesus does act now, and Jesus does answer our prayers, and Jesus can bring healing to our mortal bodies. And if you missed 2 weeks ago, it's up on YouTube. Go to the church website because you heard a tremendously powerful testimony from Shelley about how prayer works, but not just to bring healing as an end to itself, but to help us to serve Jesus. Today I want to talk about the way that God not only works in our mortal body, He works in our souls. He works in our spiritual life to help us to be holy people. We have a fancy word for this. Some of you know it. It's called sanctification. Isn't that a fancy word? Something you can impress all your friends with. Big word. Basically, it means to live as God wants us to live. So we want to talk about Jesus only. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Now may the God of peace Himself sanctify you completely, and may your whole spirit and soul and body be kept blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. He who calls you is faithful. He will surely do it. It's a remarkable verse. How do you live a holy life, or a good life, or a life that has a positive impact on the world? One that you do not do wrong, but you do what is right. Do you try harder? Do you work hard? Do you beat yourself up when you fail? Why did this hurt? I see Jesus up here. That Jesus is responsible. And Jesus only is responsible for doing something remarkable in my life, not me. And when I take control and I try to live the best that I can, I will fail. And the world and the church is full of people who want to do their best, to be their best, and that's a good thing. But my best does not measure up to what Jesus wants from me. I judge myself by my own standards, not the standards of God. But you know what? We don't live in terror of mistakes. We live in grace. I'll look at another verse. I already read this one. This is part of the passage I read a few minutes ago, Romans 3. But now the righteousness of God is being manifested apart from the law. Although the law and the prophets bear witness to it, the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe. The law. What's the law? The law is a standard of right and wrong. Live by this standard and you're right. Don't live by it, and you're wrong. That's what the law is. But none of us, not one of us, does it right. We need to understand that trying our best is not the point of Christianity. It's living in a state of grace. What matters is Jesus, always, and Jesus only. I will never be up to God's standards. I need to look to Jesus. We live in a world where we worship those who are self-made, who are the strong-willed in our society, and it sounds so good. We even hear this statement that God will help those who help themselves, which is not in the Bible anywhere. What that does is it leaves people determined to live up to an impossible standard or depressed by the fact that they cannot do it. There's a family of twin boys who looked identical, but they were complete opposites in their personalities. One was always a little pessimistic, one was always overly optimistic. One thought it was too hot, the other would always think it was too cold. Just to see what would happen. This is not a true story, by the way, as I go through it. The father of these twins, one Christmas, decided to take the pessimist and see if he could turn him more optimistic, and take the optimist and make him more pessimistic or something. I don't know why you do that. So he went to the pessimist twin and he filled his room with every imaginable Christmas gift he could come up with. And that night, he went by the pessimist room and found him sitting amidst all these gifts that he was lavish with. He found him crying. Why are you crying? He asked. Because my friends are going to be jealous. I'm going to have to read all these instructions before I can do anything with this stuff. I'm going to constantly need new batteries. And it's all going to eventually just break. But by the optimist room. Well, the optimist, he decided to fill the child's room with manure. But he was still happy. What are you so happy about? There's got to be a pony in here somewhere. Do you know what? It seems that if we try our best, we're either going to end up thinking of ourselves too highly and being fallen by pride, or we're going to think ourselves too low because we can never live up to a great standard. Scriptures talk about us dying to ourselves and living in Jesus. The whole idea of Christianity is not to try harder. It is that we need Jesus. That's the whole point. And Christianity is not about just going to prayer meetings and not going to the bar or something like that. It's about Jesus. So does it matter whether I do right or wrong? And the answer is absolutely. It means everything. Romans chapter 6, verse 1. Shall we go on sinning so that grace may increase? By no means you died to sin. How can you live in it any longer? It is my job to look to Jesus so that He can change my heart. He can work on my actions. He can help me in life. He can make a difference. The things I choose to do or to not do are not holiness or lack of holiness. If I'm right, I'm looking at Jesus. I'm looking at the Christ child. One day, I'm going to live in a place of perfect hope. A place of harmony with God and His creation. And until then, every time Jesus works in my life, I see a little bit of the promise that is to come. Because God's got to work. So how do we look at Jesus? How do we forever and ever look at Jesus? There's many practical steps I could give us. None of these is original. I'm sure I've talked about all of them dozens of times, but it never hurts to keep looking at Jesus and to remind us to look at Jesus. I give us 7 very quick practical thoughts. First one is we got to believe in Jesus. That's the starting place for everything. To know in my heart absolutely, completely that He is Lord, He is Creator, He is King, not just of the universe, but He's interested in me. He cares about me. The sovereign majesty of the universe is interested in my life, and He forgives my sin. He brings me hope. And everything that goes on in my life He cares about. That's where we start. Do you believe that Jesus cares about you personally? Jesus is interested in your life today? Believe in Jesus. Secondly, stop. We live in such a busy world. We need to sometimes just take a pause in life. There's a scriptural pattern that exists. That we need to take time in our day to stop, pray, to meditate, to read scriptures, maybe to sing songs of worship. There's a scriptural pattern that we need to stop in our week and take time to gather together as people and worship God. There is a pattern in the scripture where we need to stop and take time in our year to reflect and be thankful. To take moments like Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, moments that we have built into our calendar to stop, to lay aside everything else. Focus on Jesus. To be the church. Hi, Olivia. You coming up on stage for a reason? Mom and Dad are back there. You come up and see me if you want. Did I scare her? I'm sorry. Oh well. Be the church. We've talked about this recently. The church does not equal salvation. Going to church is not the same as being a Christian, but the church is a gift of God. But we don't go to attend church. It's not a place to go and sit back and hear people talk and hear some music. It is a place to be, to get involved, to serve. Just as Jesus came to serve, we grow by acting like Him. Not because I should, but because I love Jesus and I want to know Him. We believe in Jesus. We stop in our routine. We be the church. We focus. Colossians talks about setting our mind on things above. We need to take time in our life to focus our mind on things. Do you know what? Music is a great way to focus our minds on Jesus, isn't it? To listen to music that lifts our souls, that inspires us, that pulls us heavenward. We can do that. There's a lot, it's so easy to get good music these days. It's not by listening to me sing, but there are other ways. And we can have our soul lifted towards the heavens. We can read books. We can look at things of beauty that inspire us. Those are ways to focus our minds on Jesus. We need to be accountable with our habits. What I mean by this is the things that we do or do not do are not our morality. Our morality is Jesus. But some things keep us from seeing Jesus, or they help us to see Jesus. Habits. There are habits we have that are wrong. I don't know, maybe for some it's some things they do on the internet. For others it's gossip. For others it's a mind that wanders into the negative. For others, it's anger. Do we have people in our life that we can talk about these things? We won't go around and gossip about them. But people who we trust and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you pray with me? Can you ask me how I'm doing? And can you ask me if I'm instead taking time to pray, to love others, to do whatever, to build good habits into our life? Are we accountable with our habits? Sixthly, do good. Once again, coming back to this, the acts that we do are not what make us right. They are not what make us holy, but they help us. They're a guide. As Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, one act of obedience is better than hearing 100 sermons. And what he meant by that was it speaks more deeply into our life, something that takes us beyond our comfort zone that is good. That's something that teaches us much more than anything I can say from up here. Actions speak into our lives. When I do something and I test what God is doing and I see that God is faithful and God help me, that teaches me so much. I see that in so many people's lives. Somebody came to me this week and said, I think God's telling me that I should buy a book and give it to this person, but I don't know if they'd ever read it. Told them, maybe God's asking you to do that, not for the person who's going to get the cookbook for you. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. We keep telling these stories of the 5 of us who went to Africa recently. And for each of us, I think we got a lot more out of it than the people we ministered to, because we stepped out and did something in faith that we didn't think we could do. Let me tell you, God teaches us when we do things that are good. God works in our lives. Finally, get up every day and make a daily decision. Pray. Dedicate your day, dedicate your life again to Jesus. Say, Jesus, teach me to look at you this day. Help me to see you this day. Help me to see you again. It's amazing what Jesus will do when we invite him to do it. When it all comes back always to Jesus. This Christmas, make a decision to once again see Jesus. To see him for who he is, a compassionate Savior who sanctifies you, who makes you right, who helps you to know love. What's remarkable about Christmas is at Christmas, Jesus came to you. Jesus reached out to you. Jesus reached out to me. That's the whole story of Christmas. Is Jesus, despite the fact that I had done nothing for him, despite the fact there was nothing I could do for him, despite the fact that I was yet a sinner, Jesus reached out to me. I just need to look to him. And it's amazing the difference he makes. This Christmas, have you believed in Jesus ever? Do you believe he is your Savior, your Lord, that he'll forgive you? Do you take time to stop in your schedule? Do you take time to serve, to be the church? Do you take time to focus? Are you accountable with your habits? Do you do good? Do you make a daily decision for Jesus? All these things are things this Christmas season you can do to see Jesus only and to see Jesus forever.